Folks, if you're joining us, I'm going to give you one more minute for everybody to log in. Feel free to jump into the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear about that. It's maybe a little early for drinking in most of the US, but if you have a Willamette Valley wine in your glass, of course, let us know. All right, welcome everyone to Preview Week for Willamette the Pinot Noir auction. The wines featured in this tasting series are small lot bottlings for our exclusive trade auction. Contact Emily at the WVWA. If you'd like to learn more about the auction, I will put her email in the chat. For this year's auction, we're pleased to announce a charitable partnership with the James Beard Foundation's Food and Beverage Investment Fund for Black and Indigenous Americans as part of the Open for Good campaign. All funds raised on auction lots beyond the opening bids, as well as through the paddle raise pledge, will go to the investment fund. And I will drop the website for the James Beard Foundation's Open for Good Fund in the chat as well. I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for their ongoing support. And now I'd like to introduce today's featured winemakers and wines. Representing Lot 1, we have Arron Bell of Domaine Drouhin, Oregon. Representing Lot 2, Jared Etzel of Domaine Roy. Representing Lot 3, Kate Ayres of Pennernash Wine Cellars. Representing Lot 4, Chris Hermann of 00 Wines. And representing Lot 6, Alex Sokol Blosser of Sokol Blosser Winery. And now I'll kick it off to our host, Eugenia Keegan of Jackson Family Wines. Eugenia, take it away.
Thank you, Julia, and welcome to our audience out there. Sadly, we can't see you. Hopefully you can see us and more importantly, hear us. Very excited. This is the Willamette Valley Pinot Noir Barrel Auction Preview Week. We've never had a preview week quite like this before. And today we're going to talk with our winemakers for the first 6 lots, and they're going to share their thoughts about the vintage and the wines themselves. We have 15 of these scheduled for the week, and this is day 1, and this is seminar 1. So we get to make all the mistakes and everybody else gets to learn from us. We hope that what you do out there is enjoy this tasting, and hopefully it creates lots of questions, and you will throw those into the chat room or the Q&A, and Julia will assist with that. So it's a gorgeous day here in the Willamette Valley. We're having an absolutely extraordinary year. I think everybody would put a big nod on what Mother Nature has done beautifully for us outside while the rest of the world is going nuts. Our grapevines are in great shape. So with that, we're going to kick it off to Lot 1. And Lot 1 is DDO because David Millman is the chairman of this year's auction, and the chair always gets the first lot. So Arron, no further ado, from DDO, please say good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So Arron Bell from Domaine Drouhin, Oregon, in the Dundee Hills. This is our Rose Rock wine, though. So we actually are going to go to the Eola Hills. It's kind of our next adventure in Oregon. We've been here 34 years, and in 2013, we started our next adventure called Rose Rock. So this is our DG Cuvée, which is Davies Gibson. It's actually who founded or homesteaded the property in 1852. So we thought an appropriate nod to call it the DG Cuvée. So 2018, all of the wines of 2018. I'm just gonna breakfast of champions, have a little smell, a little taste. If my just little chime in on 2018 vintage, I think that what we look for or strive for in Pinot Noir is texture. And if you didn't get beautiful texture in 2018, you did something wrong. I think it's, for me, really the highlight of the vintage that you just have this opulence without being overripe, but a nice plush texture. Vernick often says liquid cashmere. It's what we're looking for in Pinot Noir often, and I think that 18 is a classic example of that. As I said, it's our new venture. We purchased this vineyard in 2013. It's broken into 40 different blocks of Pinot. And so we vinify all 40 of those blocks separately, trying to get to know the piece of property a little bit better. And by vinifying all those separately, what we've been doing at Domaine Drouhin throughout the years is the same. Essentially, we ferment everything separately. And then we do a reserve wine called Lorraine, Cuvée Lorraine at Domaine Drouhin. Well, the Zéphirine would be essentially the same. It is a barrel selection from those 40 parcels. It comprises, make about 50 barrels of it to make the Zéphirine. And so what we do from the Zéphirine in order to make the DG Cuvée is that we split hairs. So that the Zéphirine is about 50 barrels. We literally go through and taste all 50 of those barrels, and we choose our favorite barrel from those 50 barrels to become the DG Cuvée. So it's essentially from the Rose Rock property. It's the barrel that we thought had the most unto itself without blending. Ironically, we call it a cuvée. It is not a cuvée. It is from one barrel, but it has a good ring to it, DG Cuvée. But yeah, that's our Rose Rock 2018 DG Cuvée.
Arron, thank you. Don't you use some roto fermenters for your Pinot Noir?
We do. None for this. This would all be 4-ton and below fermenters.
All manual punch down?
All manual punch down, pumped over. Again, not a recipe. Go through, taste every morning about 5:30. So actually drinking or tasting wine at 9 a.m.
Yep. Yeah, it's like practically lunchtime for you.
Lunch, and it's almost it's noon in New York, so it's fun. But yeah, so go through, taste at 5:30 in the morning, decide what we're going to do that day, whether it's punch down, pump over, try to maintain temperature. We run our fermentations at a I would say standard 80 to 90 degree Fahrenheit temperature wise. Fermentations are about 3 weeks. Don't do any post maceration once it's dry and we feel technically it's there. Press it and put it to bed into barrel.
Aaron's got a really cool basket press.
We do.
Do we have press envy there?
I am jealous.
Hearing Alex, press envy.
Dude, it's like fire engine red. It's this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have them wash and wax it like it's a car.
Dude, you should. You should.
No, it is a beautiful press. It is, yeah.
I have not had the pleasure of making any Pinot Noir off that vineyard, but in 2012 we took Chardonnay off that vineyard, and it is so exceptional. It is just, we all begged Barbara Banke at Jackson Family Wines to buy that vineyard because it is absolutely A+. We feel
very fortunate. Yeah, we feel very fortunate that the offer was accepted, and then we all looked at each other like, oh my God, what did we just do? But it's very exciting. It's a very exciting next chapter for us, for sure. In due time, we will build a winery. It does not have a winery. It is a vineyard. There's about 130 acres planted. Some Chardonnay, about 12 acres of Chardonnay, and the remainder being Pinot Noir. But you know, in time and money, we will build a facility there. So, but we're very, very excited. The wines that come from this property, classic Eola Hills, darker fruited. For me, in this gets, you get some plums, some dark cherry, some cooking spices. But it's funny, it's called Rose Rock. We had nothing to do with the name of Rose Rock. It was already called that. There's no Rose Rocks on the property. If anybody knows what a Rose Rock is, it's actually the state stone of Oklahoma. Beautiful stone. But the wines are just incredibly floral from the property. Just really jump, whether it's Chardonnay or Pinot, different flower types, more white flower for the Chardonnay, but super, super floral. So I know it might be suggestive based on the Rose Rock name, but it's not. And Zéphirine is actually, our reserve wine from there is actually a rose. It's a thornless, fragrant, climbing rose. So kind of stayed to the flower theme, but you definitely get it in the glass. No, it's beautiful.
Arron, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Lots of interesting stuff there. I wish I were tasting that wine with you, frankly. Lot number 2, Domaine Roy A. Fees. And here's one of the Fees himself, Jared Etzel. Join us, Jared, with your wine. We're looking forward to hearing from you this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I am Jared Etzel, winemaker and co-founder of Domaine Roy Winery. Domaine Roy is a continuation of the Etzel and Roy families, whom founded Beaufrere back in 1986. And we are also some close friends of the Roy family that invested in us as well to get this project off the ground. And a little about me, I grew up on the Beaufrere property, started working in the vineyard at a really young age, and slowly but surely fell in love with it. And we kind of hold near and dear to us a lot of the founding principles of what Beaufrere was, which is make the wine in the vineyard, so farm it very closely, farm it organically. We embrace using neutral wood and kind of a classical style. We shoot for lower alcohol and bright acid, but maintaining really Oregon and Willamette Valley. That's who we want to be, and that's what we try to hone every year. We're young and we're new, so it's little by little, but we have a blast working with our two small estate vineyards, one in Dundee, which is where our auction lot comes from, the Iron Filbert Vineyard, Grand Vin, and our other vineyard is in Yamhill, Carleton. So we have two kind of polar opposite sites that kind of contribute a fun profile to our project. The 2018 vintage for me was, I think it'll be potentially a historic vintage. We had about 2 degrees Fahrenheit on average higher temperatures. We had lower than average rainfall. The higher temperatures led to maybe our only issue of the season, which was pretty minor, and it was bees. We had tons of yellow jackets trying to go after the fruit. It was delicious, ripe fruit, and it drew the bees. Other than the bees, I would say there were no issues. It was really a beautiful year, minimal disease. So people got to pick whenever they pleased. So you got these maybe ideals of what each winemaker really was targeting, which I think is rare. Often we're constricted by the weather or our schedules and whatnot, but it really opened it up. So we got a beautiful snapshot of what our targets were. Really fun. My wine, like I said, from our Dundee estate, Pommard clone. We fermented it in concrete. It was a cool and long ferment, and then aged it in neutral barrels. The fermentation had about 10% whole cluster. And here it is. I mean, I guess maybe it's hard to see the color, but it's a beautiful, just crimson, very purple, very youthful looking. And we were able to capture the energy of the vintage being super bright, vivid fruit and floral. Give it a try here. It's just exciting. Crisp, tons of fruit, and silky tannin. So I'm very happy to present this wine. We're very, very proud of it. I think it's one of the best that we've made from the estate, and hope it goes to a happy bid winner. So, thank you.
Jared, thank you very, very much. Iron Filbert. So for those who don't know much about Willamette Valley or have not visited, there are all sorts of green trees on our valley floor. We don't grow grapevines on the valley floor. We grow hazelnuts or filberts, same thing. And so I get the filbert part, but Arron, help me with that.
Yeah, we, being a startup, everything is from scratch. So it took a lot of thought, and what we ended up with was our site was one of the last remaining filbert orchards on Warden Hill Road.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to pay homage to one of the important crops of Oregon, and the filbert, and iron, because we are Jory soil, which is a very iron-rich soil and gives the soil a very bright red color. And so we just thought, keep it simple, call it iron filbert.
Thank you. Thank you. That's just great.
Yeah.
Moving on to lot 3, Penner
Well,
Ash.
I have one question for Jared, Eugenia. I'm sorry. I have to ask. Jared, I haven't seen you in a while, dude. Is that a party back there?
It's definitely a full-on mullet, and the funny thing is, so my wife had her first day back at work, and I got to watch our new son. He's 3 months old, and what did I decide to do? I gave him a haircut, and I gave him the same mullet cut that I have for fun.
Dude, that's worth a higher bid right there. People should bid that up because of the mullet.
Actually, perhaps Alex is just a little jealous. Is that, Alex?
I got nothing.
Is that a possibility?
I got nothing.
And tight, the high and tight.
Yeah. And then there's Aaron's.
Mohawk, so I could go.
Actually, Aaron, this is perfect timing because
Chris has a great head of hair.
The Mohawk, we got, that's good.
Kate has as a youngster as well, and Nico's hair, although it's a little darker than yours, Aaron, you got a little gray on him there. He's got the exact same haircut. It's so cute. Kate Ayres, winemaker for Penner Ash. Welcome. Good morning.
Oh, hello. My husband did the opposite. He's trying to catch up with my son and grow his hair out during this time. Hi, I'm Kate Ayres. I'm the winemaker here at Penner Ash Wine Cellars. I've been with the team since 2016, working with Lynn. And our wine is called the OGs on the Ridge. We paid tribute to Harry Peterson Nedry and his daughter when it was the first year that we got to work with both the Ridgecrest and the Windridge vineyards. We've got a couple blocks in both. And we've just been super thrilled to work with this wine, and really just, we were tasting through every single barrel down in the cellar, and these vineyards really just spoke to us. So we decided to pay tribute to them and hand select a few of those. So it's a combination of both Windridge and Ridgecrest, 777 Pomard and Batonsville clones, which are one of my favorites to work with, so it was a natural selection for us. A little bit about the 2018 vintage. Not a lot to contribute after Arron and Jared. It was really just a fantastic vintage. You know, we saw above average temperatures, but I think that the fruit came into maturity at a really steady pace, and the acidity levels were just phenomenal. I mean, I think we were both blown away by the retention of acidity in the grapes. So it allowed us to pick and choose the vineyards that we wanted to pick at the time we thought was right. And I think you see it in these glasses. I think that we're all speaking to that. There's a lot of freshness, but this really wonderful structure and texture that's coming out in these wines. And so for us, I think it presented something that's really lovely to drink right now, and also has this length and longevity ahead of it, which is what we're searching for here at Penner Ash. I think there's just, kind of like Jared was saying, there's a lot of red fruit, there's a spice, it's just a little bit of touch of oak in there, but I think you get all of these like floral, a mix of red and black fruits in these wines, especially this one. I'm really, really happy with how it's showing right now.
So Kate, old guys, old guard.
Original gangsters.
Original gangsters. Peters. I love that.
Yeah, so Harry is one of the original plantings up on Ribbon Ridge AVA. We're located in Yamhill, Carlton. We source from many of the sub AVAs, but since he's got some of the oldest plantings up there, we thought we'd give him a little holler.
Yeah, no, it's great. For those who aren't familiar with Harry Peterson Nedry, which is pretty impossible if you know Willamette Valley Wines, he started Chehalem, but he first started planting, it was what, early 80s that I think he was planting up on Ribbon Ridge?
Yeah, I want to say like 82-ish for the Ridge.
So he has some of these really fantastic old vines, and he and his daughter Wynn are making wines off of those vineyards. And at Penarash, it was really a wonderful thing to be able to make wine from these older sites.
Yeah, really wonderful. Keeping the blocks separate, small fermenters. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's no substitute for time on these things.
Nope.
No substitute at all. So, thanks, Kate, so much. Following up, 00, Chris Hermann. Boy, could I tell you lots of stories about Chris Hermann, but first I'm going to let him tell his own story. Chris, welcome.
Thanks very much, Eugenia. Thanks for giving me the first shot too, telling the story.
Well, you're truthful.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Hermann. My wife, Catherine Hermann, and I are the owners and founders of 00 Wines. We're a very small production, 2,000 case winery based in Carlton, Oregon. We make our wine at the Winemaker Studio. So we're among a great group of fellow winemakers and wine lovers there. We love being in Carlton. Carlton is in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. The wine that we are offering for the auction, though, is an Eola Amity Hills wine. We source, of our 2,000 cases, about 2/3 is Chardonnay and 1/3 is Pinot Noir. The Pinot Noirs are sourced primarily from the Eola Amity Hills, the Dundee Hills, and the Yamhill Carlton AVAs. This particular wine is from a fantastic vineyard in the southern end of the Eola Amity Hills. It's a wonderful Jory soil, elevation about 500-600 feet, east facing, has all the elements for making a fantastic wine. As everyone has already said, the 2018 vintage is actually probably the dream vintage that we've had for a long time, hence the name of our wine, La Rêve. For us, throughout this entire growing season, it was clear that it was, unless something terrible happened at the end, which didn't, fortunately, it was going to be a dream vintage. And as you've already heard other folks say here this morning, every element was really a dream. I mean, we had fantastic weather conditions. We had fantastic growing conditions. Unlike some of the earlier vintages of the decade, 14, 15, 16, which were also quite warm. In 18, we really had such a long, continuous warm period without major heat spikes that the fruit was able to mature absolutely perfectly. So I concur with Arron that this is probably going to turn out to be one of the best vintages in the last 30 years. So I think we're all justifiably very excited about it. For us, again, the idea of the dream vintage is something that really emerged as soon as we began tasting the wine. We use a special barrel for this. It's called a Damy Ruby barrel. It's a barrel that the Damy folks in Meursault make specifically for very high-end, beautiful, silky textured Pinot Noirs. And so we've used this barrel in connection with this vineyard over the last several years, and we've yield the wine that has absolutely gorgeous textures. And I think you've heard other people this morning refer to textural aspects of 2018. That's probably one of the most exciting things about it, is it's yielding the kind of Pinot Noir that the people in Burgundy dream of making, but we're making it here in Oregon. So we're very excited about it. Our wine is, we think, an absolutely beautiful expression of 2018, and we see that because when we bring our Pinot Noir clusters in, we sit down with a crew of about 10 people. We take each cluster and we snip each berry off of each stem. It takes about 7 or 8 hours for us to snip off enough berries to fill one 500-liter clay amphora. I know that Jared has done the same thing at Domaine Roy. And actually, the first couple of years of our project, we had his brother, Mikey Etzel, making our wine. That's when we began the individual berry snipping approach and using clay amphora to ferment the wine. We don't age it in amphora, but we ferment it. And because of that, we get a beautiful oxygenation through the porous clay walls. And what that does is it allows us to have really silky, beautiful wine. So this is a fantastic vintage. In tasting and smelling the wine, what we're getting out of this east-facing Eola Amity Hills vineyard is just beautiful aromatics, particularly for us, of chocolate and coffee. And that's something that we find emerging more and more in Oregon Pinot Noir. And we think it's an element that is absolutely gorgeous. So we're very excited about this wine, and we look forward to having people taste it. And we're very excited to be participating in the auction again this year.
Yes, thank you so much. I thank you for the description of Le Rêve. I actually thought it was perhaps just for your whole project. This is second life, second act. Was a lawyer in his first act, always a wine lover, and became our wine lawyer. And I think that was just the confluence of two interests. But thank heavens, because you were the only one helping out in the legal world of wine for years and years and years and years and years. I remember working on water rights with you probably 30 years ago. And Chris, who loves Burgundy, kicked off 00 and is making some of the most brilliant wines. I can't say enough, Chris, about the exceptional job you've done taking your dream and kicking it off. It's super brilliant. So congratulations on that. Thank you for being part of the auction.
Yeah.
Last up, but never ever really last or least, Alex Sokol Blosser with the Sokol Blosser wine. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Eugenia, and everyone in Willamette Auction Pinot Zoom land. Yes, this is, I feel very honored to be part of this first group. Yes, I wish I had hair as cool. I mean, Aaron's, that is awesome, dude. I'm sorry I didn't say how much I appreciate your hair as well. So let me give you just a brief background about Sokol Wasser. So we're actually turning the corner on, we're going on 50 years. So 2021 will be our 50th year in business. So my parents never thought, it's crazy, crazy. This may go down as our toughest year of the 50 years in 2020, but hey, not talking about that. But they never thought when they put grapes, their first vines in the ground here in the Dundee Hills in 1971, that their soon-to-be kids would be running it. So, but here we are. Mom and Dad are retired. I'm the winemaker and I oversee the vineyards. My sister Allison is, my younger sister Allison, she's my boss. She's a CEO. So you actually will be seeing her because she'll be playing Eugenia at a number of these tastings later this week as well. We're in the Dundee Hills, so that means volcanic soil, and that means deep volcanic soil. I think that's one of the things that differentiates Dundee Hills from what you get in the Eola Amity Hills. Eola Amity Hills is a lot of volcanic soil, but it's not as uniformly deep. You got many different gradations of amazing volcanic soil in the Eola Amity Hills. Another thing about Sokol Blosser is we, all of our 90-acre estate vineyard is certified organic by the Oregon Department of Ag. We don't make organic wine, but we try to be as good to the earth as possible, and being certified organic is a big part of that. Okay, the vintage, 2018. Now, the 2018, as everyone else has said, I can't overstate this. It's a very exciting vintage. I became winemaker in 2012, and to start off on such a good vintage as that, I was very grateful. And then I got it right back at me in 2013, but we won't talk about that. But 2018, definitely the best vintage as winemaker that I've had the chance to work with. And in my mind, what makes a great vintage is you just get, you know, it's like a good baseball team. Everyone shows up to play. I mean, in 2018, you got really good ripeness. And with the ripeness, you got really good tannins. And with the tannins, you got really good acid. So everything was there. Everything came to play. And so all the wines that I'm tasting from the 2018 vintage were just, wow. You know, as Aaron mentioned, you know, if you didn't make something with texture or something with something that was quite compelling, oh, I don't know what you were doing, because it was quite a delicious vintage to work with. So the wine, I'll do my own sounds here. This is from a failed experiment that my parents had. So we call this fence line. our fence line Pinot Noir, we actually source the grapes from a block called Goose Pen. All of our blocks are named after what used to be there. So originally, this was a block of Riesling. And this block of Riesling, one of our claims to shame at Sokol Blosser is we were the second person to get phylloxera in the Willamette Valley. Second. We weren't number one, we were number two. A lot of people blame us, but we were number two. And that section was this Goose Pen Riesling that got phylloxera. So when we replanted it in 1998, we felt the highest and best use for this site was for Pinot Noir, which I'm glad we did, because to this day, this Goose Pen block produces some of what I feel is some of my most favorite Pinot Noir from our estate and some of the most compelling. So what my parents did was they put a flock of geese into this block, fenced it up with the hope that these geese would do some natural mowing and natural fertilization. Well, we didn't realize that geese were very social, and this block was right up against our house. So the geese did not disperse into this 2-acre vineyard. They just stayed at the fence line. You get it? They stayed at the fence line and they just honked at us, waited for us to come home from school, waited for us to come out and play in the backyard. They didn't disperse. They didn't shit all over this block. So they became pillows and geese. And let me tell you, the first night that my dad made the goose, none of us could eat it. It's like, we can't eat this. These are the geese from the block. Ah. Yeah, long story. But so, fence line. How do you make a wine from one row? Well, it wasn't just from one row. We actually picked this block, couple-acre block, in two. So this fence line where the geese went we kind of put in one in a number of barrels. And this block, this Pinot Noir was picked from one used barrel we actually throw just one Cooper at this block, Mercury. We love their top barrel, which is called Prestige. And this is a once used Prestige barrel. Another thing special about this block is we use a lot of different types of fermentations here at Sokol Blosser. We do ambient ferments, we inoculate with commercial yeast, and Goose Pen block, this block was one of the blocks where we actually isolated our own house yeast. So we actually went in 2013, we went and harvested some grapes in this block, put them in a bucket, put them in a box, sent them down to ETS labs in California, and they actually fermented it, and they saw if there was a yeast that wasn't in their commercial database that actually took the fermentation through. And there was. So we grew that yeast, we call it Sokol A. We're not very creative, sorry. So we call it Sokol A yeast, that's our house yeast, and this was fermented with the yeast that we actually found in that vineyard. And it's an oak for about 16 months, and all the Pinot Noir in this is destemmed. Everything's punched down, and this Pinot Noir, I've been drinking it all morning. It's lovely. It's a lovely, lovely wine. You know, as Jared was pointing out, we got fantastic color in 2018. And this has some nice, spicy, red cherry notes, almost going to some red cola, that cola fruit coming from that once used barrel. It's not completely neutral. It still lends itself a little bit of the toast from this Prestige barrel. Plenty of, God, the fruit is so nice. It's almost, I don't like jammy, but this has plenty of fruit that is showing right off the bat, which I enjoy. Good tannins. And as Kate was mentioning, the acid was there. The acid did not leave us. In 2017, there was some acid that just, because we got some pretty high heat spikes in the end of summer in 2017. But in 2018, the acid didn't leave. Thank you. Don't leave us, acid. And it shows up in the wine. So I think if you do get this lot, I'd be happy to wax and wane more poetically about fence line if you want. So enjoy.
And who cooks the goose? I guess is the question for that dinner right there.
Yes, my dad.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Alex. What a treat to talk about a vintage where we didn't have to say, but, you know, that's really amazing, actually, listening to all of you, that we didn't have to qualify or or comment about some challenge that we may have had. It was just one of those vintages, because certainly you come in on 17 and 19 had its own challenges. So how fun to be talking about a brilliant vintage like 18. Thank you, panelists. This has been really fun. I see a comment here as a reminder that Allison, by the way, is hosting these on Wednesday. So she will be unavailable to you, Alex, on Wednesday. She will be busy. So you can get away with lots of mischief that day. Will be tied to her Zoom that day.
Good, good.
So Julia, anything in the Q&A? Or
we actually got some really interesting questions just from registration that I would love to throw at some of our panelists. Folks, if you have additional questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A or the chat. The first one up, and I think, you know, just about anybody could answer this because it's so open-ended. What are the biggest challenges facing the small independent producer right now?
And you have 30 seconds to answer. Chris, you're super small and independent in this group.
Yeah, Chris, tell us.
I think the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is making sure that we, with a very small group of folks, it's Catherine and me and our winemaker, Win Peterson Edry, and our assistant winemaker and our French winemaker who's coming over. It's a pretty small team. Our biggest challenge is how do we make wine in a vintage without going too much into it? That's going to be very challenging in terms of making sure that we're all safe. We cannot have this harvest be anything other than completely healthy and safe. Or for folks like us, it would be a disaster. We have no investors, we have no partners. It's just this little family here in Carleton, and things have all got to go right. We're very excited about the planning that's been done. I think everyone's done a fantastic job of planning for this vintage, and that's really great. So that's sort of the most immediate challenge. I think the larger challenge for us in every vintage is we sell most of our wine direct to private buyers, and so we need to be sure that people around the country are super excited about Oregon Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, so that they keep buying from us, because for us there's really not a distribution channel. We're too small. No one at Southern Glaciers or anywhere else is in the least bit interested in a 2,000 case winery. So the challenge is developing connections with buyers around the country, maintaining them and keeping them excited about Oregon wine.
Yeah, if we could have anything come out of the issue that we're in right now, it would be the opening up of shipping channels, so that, because we've all noted that the electronic purchasing has shot up and completely changed. People are far more comfortable ordering wine and food over the internet, which is a big change. But as we know, it's not always easy to get an alcoholic beverage off to customers around the country, and which you do with everything else, as we know. So as we are more and more comfortable ordering wine online, would be helpful if it were easier and easier to get that wine shipped out. And for a winery like Chris's, that's kind of extremely important. Whereas when you're a little bit larger, you've got a little bit more opportunity for distribution. Glenn Siegel is with us today. Hi, Glenn. Great to see you. But had a question about the crop. If anybody could take a comment on the crop load in 18. Seemed to me it was right about average at sort of the 3 ton an acre, 2.5 to 3 ton an acre. Comments out there, winemakers? Crop load in 18?
Yeah, we were about 2.75 tons to the acre, and that's on a high density. So we have about 3,100 vines to the acre. Thinking of DDO, thinking of Rose Rock, it'd be would have been similar, a little less crop load, probably 2.5 tons to the acre. Just the set was a little bit different, but not far off of historical.
Yeah, we certainly had enough crop that we had to go through and do a couple of hand passes to bring it in line. Anyone else have an experience that was different than that?
Yeah, we had a fair amount of crop here at Superwasser. We actually dropped, if I remember correctly, about 40% of the crop on the ground, and still we were well above 3 ton an acre. So we were 3 to 3.5, even though we're shooting for 2.75 ton an acre. So we were surprised with usually you don't get quantity and quality at the same time. It tends to be a rarity. So that's what was interesting about 2018.
Was that number of clusters, Alex, or was it berry size, cluster size? Did that influence that number as well?
As far as
Weight?
The weight.
Yeah.
If I didn't, I'm doing crop estimates right now in our vineyard, and what I'm trying to go back to what the memory was of 2018. I believe set was fairly good for us, so we did have medium-sized to larger clusters, and there were plenty of clusters out there. So everything was quite good. Another thing that was really special about 2018 was, in Oregon, it tends to rain once you get into September. But in 2018, we got like the perfect amount of rain. It rained a couple times and it was just perfect. It was like dust settler rains. It wasn't deluges. It wasn't 2013. It was perfect, which kind of helped push out harvest, give us a little bit more hang time. But it was just like that little tweezer full of drop into the baby bird's mouth. And the baby bird was like, okay, thank you. And it was perfect.
The vines haven't had any water for a very long time. And so, they're like any plant. They get a little bit thirsty. So if you want them to go that extra few weeks, that little bit of water, you can irrigate. But then here, generally, we rely on Mother Nature for that sort of thing. And then concomitant with that was the other thing that makes Oregon is the weather in September. And when it's in the low 70s in September, you've got these longer hang times and slower ripening, and it just makes all the difference in the world as opposed to a September that's hot. What else is in that chat room? We had one of our registrants write probably a 20 question.
It was so delightful. Another favorite, and this again, for anybody, who is the Pinot consumer right now? Has that changed in the last few years from your perspective? Do you see that changing in the next few years? The Oregon Pinot Noir consumer.
Well, if you look at the sales of Oregon wine and the growth of Oregon Pinot Noir as a category, you have to assume that those wines are going down people's gullets, not into people's cellars. So it seems like it's really heading up. What are you seeing in your own sales at your own wineries? Jared, you're a pretty small independent guy. What are you seeing in terms of traction at the winery a bit ago, and maybe more importantly, traction in 3-tier? Are you active in 3-tier with Domaine Roy?
We're active, but it's not our primary way that we sell our wine. We're seeing a very healthy growth in demand, and I think that's echoed by all producers in the Willamette Valley as Oregon is broadening its reputation and strengthening its reputation with each vintage. I think everybody's seeing more demand, and it's great. People out of the country and healthy support throughout. Direct to consumer is our focus here, and so we host and see people from all over the U.S. In a regular year. This year with our challenges, we've really seen the Northwest locals pour in better numbers than we've ever seen, and we're very grateful and thankful for that.
Yeah, the D2C support for our wineries has been just overwhelming. It's been so great. Jared, I just have to tell you, I know that behind you is a fireplace that has wood, and it's knotty pine or something, but from this side, I just want you to know, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet holes. It's like somebody took a direct shot at your head and just missed slightly. And every time I look at
it's Wild West out here, so
yeah.
It's hard out here in Dundee.
This was reclaimed wood, and it was from a very old barn that was falling down from the late 1800s, and so those were, I believe, holes that were from a like peg and dowel style of construction. Anyway.
I don't know. They could have been gunshots if it's that.
Yeah.
You are near the shooting range though too, so just be careful.
Yeah. Not everybody has a good aim. Great. That's great. All right. What else was packed into that?
Oh gosh. So wait, did anyone else want to comment on the changing palette, or should I move on?
Apologies. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to check. So what do you, if you could take the consumer, the Pinot Noir consumer, and just like tell them one thing that sticks in their head that you feel like consumers don't understand, or you wish consumers understood better about Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
It over delivers for its price point.
Yeah.
I'd say the great ageability of the wine. I mean, we have a lot of people ask us, okay, you know, these Willamette Valley Pinots are really luscious and the fruit is wonderful, but how's that going to translate into a wine that has 5, 10, 15, 20 years of age? And our response is always, because we've heard a lot of folks this morning talk about acidity, because we so regularly have really wonderful high natural acidity, we know the wines are going to age beautifully. And I think that's really important to a lot of buyers, particularly on the East Coast, who are used to buying European wines. And so I think that's something that we always stress to them when they say, well, how do we know? Because, you know, the industry is so relatively young in Oregon. And so we focus people on the acidity as being a clear signal that the wines are going to have the backbone to age really beautifully.
Yeah, you know, Chris, that's a great comment. I have the distinct pleasure of living with a true OG, a true old guard. It's been making wine here for all those 50 years. And one of the things that's so delightful when we have guests, which used to be often, is opening these old Adelsheim wines that are 25 and 30 years old. And you think about how much less winemakers knew about growing grapes and making wine in the Willamette Valley then, and it's really about where we are, and these wines just age beautifully. I was having a conversation recently with someone about alternative packaging, and one of the questions that came up was there's so many wonderful options, but will those options allow a bottle to age for 20 to 30 years in a cellar if it's Tetra Pak or whatever cans, whatever it might be? You know, becomes a different product if you're trying to age something for that long. It's a really great point. Ageability is one of the things that we share with Burgundy, but one of the things that keeps us, I think, a little more unusual in the new world.
Yeah, at every point on the price point scale for Oregon Pinot Noir, whether it's under 20, over 20, from nose to tail, I would put Oregon Pinot Noir up against anything coming out of the New World. You know, whether it's California, New Zealand, Chile, Tasmania. I just think that for pound, we punch above our weight class. And that's just because of we're growing the right grape in the right spot with really interesting soils and really cool winemakers.
The coolest.
Not counting myself, just mostly Kate. She's
I think that one of the things we know is that we are very collaborative, and sharing is one of the things that we actually do best. And sharing means giving everybody all the information that they could possibly ask for on winemaking, because we know that each site and each vintage is going to give a different wine. So you can hand out all your secrets and you're still going to make a different wine. And it's really has helped us, certainly in Pinot classically, but now in Chardonnay, to just ramp up really quickly in quality. It's not one of us working on this. It's 200 of us working on this, 300 of us working on this. Makes all the difference. I had a question here from Eugene, whose name is beautiful. What is a typical order size of a direct-to-consumer sale? And I would say 6 to 12 bottles. Usually it's rare that somebody walks out of the winery with less than 6 bottles. Depends on how many wineries they're going to and how much room they have in their trunk. But certainly at the winery, I would say 6 to 12, and online, I'd say it's usually a case, 12-bottle case.
We have another question in Q&A that's a little bit more involved. How is global warming changing the wines and winemaking in Oregon?
Global what?
Global warming.
I haven't heard that one.
Have you guys heard of global? Is that a thing?
That's
Oh no.
a new question. Kate, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that we've all sort of been alluding to that, talking about the 18 vintage. You know, we saw above average temps. That's a trend that we're all seeing. I think that we're all probably taking it back to the vineyard and really relying heavily on our viticultural staff. With how we're dealing with the vines and cover crops, a lot of us are on dry farmed sites, so that's been a little bit more difficult. So there's for us personally a lot of play with our crop load. We've been seeing heavy set and making sure that we're coming into balance with thinning down and allowing enough fruit to stay on the vine to compensate for some of these warmer growing seasons. And then further down the line, as we get further into ripening, I think dealing with these acidity levels, we all really, Oregon is known for its acid and for its longevity and for hanging on. And these warmer seasons it's more difficult to keep that balance. So I think we're all trying very hard to keep balance in the vineyard, which is allowing for some even ripening and some balance of flavors in the winery. But it's not easy. It's not an easy task for all of us.
Other comments from the panelists? I know that some of the refinement that we're doing as we continue to learn, when warm weather hits is very important. If we have warm weather in early spring, that creates one set of circumstances. If we have a hot August, that's another set of circumstances. If it's hot during late September and into some of the ripening period, very different set of challenges. And of course, it's not just global warming, it's climate change, and we're watching precipitation change a great deal. And there again, if we have a full rainfall, but that rainfall's before the new calendar year, so it's all in November and December, very, very different set of growing conditions than if we have all that water in the spring. We had a very wet June this year. Does anybody have any idea what the rainfall was in June this year? It was really amazing. I rarely hit 70 degrees. I think once or twice we hit 70 degrees, and it was very cool and very wet.
It was our fourth.
It felt a lot like growing up.
Yeah, fourth wettest June on record.
What was that, Arron?
We had 3.7 inches of rain, so we average about 2.3.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as Kate said, like growing up, Kate's a native Oregonian, and if you talk to people who've lived here for 30, 40, 50 years, it's felt a lot more this year like sort of a more classic Oregon spring.
Yeah, those of us who lived here in the 50s and 60s will attest to that, Eugenia. Not that I was.
I know I wasn't. I was just toddling around in the 50s.
Just one quick comment I wanted to make. One of the interesting sort of developments that I'm seeing sort of in my legal practice representing people is for the first time, we see buyers looking to buy north-facing properties because of their sense that if you look out over the whatever 30, 40, 50-year life of a vineyard, you know, today the north-facing slopes may still be a little bit on the cool side, but people are starting to bet that's going to be something that's going to be emerging as sites as we go forward, which of course is completely different from what people were looking at. You know, when Alex's parents were planning in the, whenever it was, late 60s, early 70s, everybody was looking at lower elevation west-facing slopes to get fruit ripe. That's really evolving, which actually makes for an ever diversifying, interesting palette for Oregon Pinot, because we're now going to see a wider variety of aspects. But that's a definite trend, in addition to which, of course, just planting at higher elevation. But 20 years ago, if someone had said, I'm going to buy a north-facing piece of property, you'd say, good luck.
Yeah, the greater full. Yeah,
that's changing.
Yeah, it's a super good point. We classically have never planted on north-facing slopes or above 700, 800 feet, and now we're climbing up the hill to 1,000, 1,100. Yeah, north-facing. It's great. It gives us more, more opportunity to plant grapes. And for those people who have properties that have north-facing slopes, it gives them an opportunity to grow. I've heard a couple winemakers lament sometimes, I wish I were farther up the hill, which is kind of, which surprise, you wouldn't have heard that 10 years ago. Nobody would have said that.
And that's actually an advantage in Oregon. So as I think some of you know, we have a small Burgundy project. So we're making Grand Cru white Burgundy and Grand Cru red Burgundy. And the thing that we're seeing from the folks that we're buying our fruit from there is, a lot of them too are moving up higher into the haute côte. So we're seeing the same thing happening in Burgundy that we're seeing here. The bigger problem over there is that these fabulous vineyards that everyone's been excited about for the last couple hundred years, you can't move them. Moussigny isn't moving, Chambertin isn't moving, Corton, Charlemagne isn't moving, and it's becoming a little bit of an existential issue for the people there. So in some ways, there's the same kind of flexibility, but because people in Burgundy are so focused on those Grand Cru and Premier Cru, it's, I think, even a more troublesome issue for them in a way. And again, that's the new world advantage. We just are inherently more sort of open and flexible. We have a lot of room to expand, and so that's a big advantage for Oregon going forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Julia, anything else that we should touch on before we thank our guests?
I have one more, and it could be taken a couple different ways. So let's make this the last one. And the question is, does farm to table include wine for you? And do you feel that the customer sees it that way? I know that, like I said, that could be answered a few different ways, but I thought it was interesting.
Alex, you want to take a shot at that?
I'll speak from what I've seen in the marketplace, and then I'll say personally. I don't see farm to table including wine when I go travel around the world. I think when it comes to going to Tokyo, they might harvest the fish at just the right time, but they're more than happy to drink red Burgundy or Pinot Noir from Superwasser or from Oregon. Go to New York City, go to Toronto, go wherever. People want to drink the right wine from the right place to go with their food. Now, personally, I'm spoiled. We all live in the Willamette Valley, which is a breadbasket of food, breadbasket of wine. We got close to the beach. We got, fish and shellfish. So I can do farm to table here extremely easily. But I don't see that including wine when I go out and travel around the world.
Anyone else comment on wine being part of farm to table? I've been amused over years and years of being out selling wine, and it's taken 20 years ago, chefs were not necessarily interested in wine. They were extraordinarily interested in food, and to your reference, they'll pick a piece of fish or a vegetable at some absolute optimal moment in their mind and drink whatever sitting there at the bar. And I think there's been a greater synergism between food and wine. The question is, do people around the world sit down for a great meal and automatically assume that wine is part of that? Certainly in some countries, we know that, but not necessarily around the world. Yeah. Anything else from our esteemed panelists before we thank our audience, whoever and wherever they are, or whomever and wherever they are? God, my English teacher's rapping my knuckles as I say.
Thank you, Eugenia, for leading our Rat Pack.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
I just know that you'll be better than group 2 and 3 today. They're all losers.
Shots fired, just like Jared's.
Yeah, I hope they're listening. So, thank you, Julia, and thank you to all our winemakers today. It's been great to have you and to hear from you. So enjoy the rest of this.
Thank you for having us. Yep. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I have dropped information in the chat, a link to register to bid for trade if you haven't already done so. We look forward to seeing you next week for our online auction, August 11th, 12th, and 13th. And if you'd like to learn more about the auction, if you're a consumer and haven't heard of it, I did drop the contact information for Emily in our office in the chat. So thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you the rest of this week.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, everybody. Be well.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.